Welcome back, everybody. Our next guest's memoir will make you laugh, will make you cry, will make you rejoice in all of the beautiful contradictions that it means to be human. In the book, Life as a Unicorn, A Journey from Shame to Pride and Everything in Between, author and drag superstar Amrou Al-Kadhi details living at the intersection of being queer, Iraqi, and Muslim. And we welcome Amrou to the show today. Hello.
Hello, it's such a pleasure to be on with you today. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. We're so excited about your memoir and about seeing you here today. Now, speaking of the memoir, you said that you wanted to provide almost a counter narrative for queer people of color, rather. What common narrative were you hoping to sort of work against?
Yeah, when I wrote the memoir, I was getting really frustrated, particularly in the UK. I was doing a lot of journalism at the time, and I was one of the only people of color really working at a couple of publications. And I was only ever invited to write when I was essentially defending trans rights or defending Muslim rights. And as a result, I found myself constantly just being asked to shout and kind of defend my position to exist. And it made me feel like all I was good for was sort of saying, I'm oppressed, this is really hard, this is really hard. And then that actually made me, I think, feel quite annoying on paper. And so when I decided to write this book, I wanted to not enter any debate or any kind of active polemic, and instead just revel in the nuance and contradictions and humor. Humor is so key to me because when it comes to minority stories, I think people expect them to be full of trauma. Whilst I don't shy away from some of the difficult stuff, I want to kind of rejoice in our lives. And I think the main counter narrative is showing our lives as full of joy, which is not how the media usually sees us, I think.
Mm. The other part that is so fascinating in your memoir is this constant, development or of evolution of your queerness and between your queerness and Islam. And you say that this, really changed significantly at the age of 7. Can you share that story? What happened?
Yeah, sure. So, I was pretty happy until I was 7. I was living in Bahrain at the time, which is a very small country in the Middle East, and pretty much everything was cozy. All I really remember was going to the pool, and I was happily religious, and I had all the religious and cultural traditions. But then I had an Islam teacher at the school that I was at who was really focusing in on sin as a key part of Islam. And in Islam, there's this practice where every time you commit a sin, you get bad points on your left shoulder. And every time you do good deeds, you get good points on your right. And sins could literally happen from the most natural of thoughts, literally like, I'm jealous of that girl's fuchsia pencil case. There you go, a sin point. Or like, my brother annoyed me, sin. And then coupled with that, internally, I was having a lot of questions about sexuality, and I actually had a massive crush on Robin Hood, the cartoon fox. And our Islam teacher, apparently loads of people did actually. But our Islam teacher basically said, homosexuality was just an infinite number of sins. I started to have a real internal, I'm in massive trouble here. And when I started to verbalize how I was feeling to family members, they responded very negatively. So I think that was like my queerness and my faith are not going to work in harmony there. But interestingly, it doesn't actually say it's wrong to be gay in the Quran. It was something that I inherited culturally from people who were teaching me. It's not actually in the Quran, which I learned till quite late.
But interestingly enough, you came out to your parents as white before you came out as gay. Why did you choose to distance yourself from your heritage in that way?
By the time I was 13, I knew internally that I had a lot of gender questions. I knew that I was gay, and I was really just so terrified of going to hell and all those things from Islam. And a lot of my relatives were already punishing me from a young age because they could see how nonconformist I was and just the way that I was behaving, which was there was nothing wrong with it, but I was constantly being warned. And so because I wasn't able to verbalize that I was gay or anything like that to my family, because, I was terrified of being rejected or, even worse, I thought, well, what I'm really trying to tell them is that I'm Western. I'm not part of this heritage. So,
Mm.
so guys, I feel more white than I do Arab because I was associating Arab with really negative
Right.
things in terms of sexuality. And so it was my way of beginning that kind of divorce from my heritage, but really it was a sort of coming out in
Hmm.
disguise. Really also later in my life that I realized how problematic the West can be as well.
You discuss how you found yourself performing so many parts of your identity, performing your sexuality, performing your gender, performing parts of your religion. And yet you ended up finding yourself in sort of like the ultimate state of performance, which was actually through drag,
Yes.
interestingly enough. So you talk about how, in doing drag, you actually were able to perform those other parts of your identity less. Take us through that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's so beautifully put. I think yeah, you're right. The way that I was raised, I was always aware of, okay, in a Muslim space, I have to hide my gay identity. In a kind of gay space, maybe I have to hide my Islamic identity. In a Western space, I'm going to maybe try and seem more British. And an Arabic space, you constantly just fractured myself. And I never felt that my queerness and my heritage could exist in harmony. I was constantly living by other people's rules before I did performing. My parents' rules or British rules, and trying to perform up to them. But when you're in drag on stage, you create the rules, and the audience have to subscribe to your world. You're saying, "This is who I am," and it may not be real, quote unquote, but this is how I would like to present myself. And you can either leave or you can come and fall into my world. My God, I don't know where I would be without drag, to be honest. I say to people that it's like hypnotherapy where you literally train your brain to believe positive things instead of negative things. So I used to feel so shy. And then in drag, it's like you get to be the opposite, or I used to feel so ashamed about being feminine. But in drag, it's the thing that I'm proudest of. So yeah, a real lifesaver for me.
One of the most memorable parts of this book is when you detail sort of confronting your mother about the judgment and policing that you experienced from her during your childhood, and her perspective on your queerness really surprised you. Can you tell us a little bit about your takeaway from that conversation?
Yeah, because we had quite a traditional Arab family, my mother was the one who was looking after the home. And as a result, all the sort of policing of my sexuality and my gender and was all through her because it was sort of seen as her job. And in the Quran, actually, if you go to hell, so does your mother because she failed you as a mother. So really, it's culturally the mother's job. And so I had all the rage at her, and I had financial freedom, social freedom. We lived in different countries, and we had it out heart to heart, and it was a difficult conversation. But what I really got from her was this sort of, she also had been policed and punished her whole life as a woman living in, Iraq. And the things that I was complaining about happening to me were things that had happened to her. And I think the reason she had such a sort of violent reaction to what I was doing was I was getting to live out the things that she never could. She married so young and she was 19 and she hasn't got to live out, I think, and she could be a Hollywood star. Like if you met my mum, she's like an Angelina Jolie. When you speak to her, it's like as if there's
Oh.
paparazzi everywhere. And I think I'm living out the freedom that she didn't even know she had the ability to choose in a man. So I think she thought it was a bit of a slap in the face. I always say my drag character is my mum, but the version of her she never was allowed to be.
Glamrou,
Mm.
which I love so
Mm.
much. Amrou, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. No, a real pleasure.
The book is called Life is a Unicorn, and good news, it's available everywhere right now. We'll be right back.